Everybody, happy Friday, right here. Round the Nation, TYT Nation, Jeff Waldorf with you today. Got a great show for you guys today. A lot of disastrous news, but then we're going to have a little bit of fun. After we get with the disastrous news, we'll leave out on a lighter, I guess maybe it's not a lighter note, but we'll get to that later on in the show. Yeah, most of the news is pretty disastrous. What are you going to do, right? Donald Trump is president of the United States, and every day is a fucking disaster. But we're going to talk about this disaster, and we're going to get through it. And we're going to get through these stories on Friday, and then, like I said, we're going to have a little bit of a fun / disastrous segment on Alex Jones. Very, very interesting stuff on that. Before I get into it, of course, I want to thank everybody watching the stream. If you could give us a like and give us a share, that would be much, much appreciated. See if we can get to 200 live viewers. One of these days we're going to hit that, and we're going to break 200. So that would be super awesome. All right. So I want to thank, other than everybody who's watching right now and sharing, thank you. But I also want to give some thanks to patrons. Patreon.com/TYTNation. I want to thank Rohan Mapiri, Robert Butler, and Gary Steelman. Thank you, Robert, Rohan, and Gary. Much, much appreciated. Thank you for being patrons. Thank you for supporting independent progressive media. Your contribution and your help means the world to me and to this show. So thank you very much, those of you whose names I've called out, and thanks to everyone else who contributes as well. You're all awesome. All right. That said, let's go through some of the stories here. Of course, we have the Republican budget framework. Very important. It's not a binding budget, but still, nonetheless, it's actually paving the way for Republican tax cuts. So we'll talk about what's in that. And what it does, why it's important. Then we have Republicans that are leaving the Congress, leaving the House specifically, trying to get away from Trump. Then we have the question of, is President Trump the worst president in history? There's actually a poll on that. That's fairly fun. Then we've got a Cub Scout standing up to a racist Republican. That's fun. Pollution, super disastrous story. What's the impact of pollution on the world, especially when it comes to human lives? That's an important story. And then finally, we're going to have fun with Alex Jones and some of his supplements. It's a fascinating story. Again, disastrous if you're actually taking those supplements. But nonetheless, we're going to talk about that. So that'll be the end of the show. All right. With that, let's move on. Let's get into it. Okay. Now, last night, Senate Republicans passed a budget that would essentially give massive amounts of money or I would actually take massive amounts of money from important social programs and actually give it to the rich. It would give it to corporations and the ultra wealthy in the form of tax cuts. And it also paves the way for the GOP's tax cut program. Now, Common Dreams reported that along strict party lines, the Republican-controlled Senate voted to pass a sweeping budget measure that, along with the giveaways to the rich, would also eliminate or eviscerate funding from social programs, healthcare, education, and affordable housing. Now, the measure passed by 51 to 49, with only one Republican, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, not voting for it. Now, this is a non-binding resolution, okay? So what this does is that this actually opens the way for budget reconciliation. That means that if the Republicans want to pass tax cuts, they no longer have to fear a Democratic filibuster. So that's the goal with this, okay? That's why this opens the way to to so-called tax reform, which actually might do better than their failed attempt at repealing the ACA. This actually has a better chance of going through. So, and again, they only need 50 votes for this one. So that could be a big disaster. Now, the tax cuts, by the way, are estimated to add up to about $1.5 trillion. That was how much it would add to the deficit over the coming decade. So look, if you care about the deficit, then obviously you should be against this. And actually, that's why Rand Paul did vote against this. So he's like, no, I'm not going to vote for anything that adds to the deficit or does any sort of spending. I want to do spending cuts, he says, and I want to do, revenue neutral, whatever, right? Now, according to ABC News, this year's measure also calls for $473 billion in cuts from Medicare. So this is what they're cutting to get these, okay? $473 billion of cuts in Medicare over 10 years and more than $1 trillion in cuts from Medicaid. Now, Medicaid, as you know, helps the very poorest people be able to actually get some health care. Now, Republicans look at that and like, no, got it. $1 trillion. No, we can take that from the poor and use it for tax cuts for the very, very rich. Anybody who doesn't see what they're doing here and see that they have so much contempt for the poor is not paying attention. This is what they do. Oh, Medicaid? No, we support Medicaid. Because all that money, but it just so happens all that money can actually do better if it's given in tax cuts for the rich. Oh, it's grotesque, and they're doing it right out in the open. Anybody who says that the Republicans care about the poor is deluding themselves. Every measure that the Republicans put forward just screws the middle class, screws the poor, and gives giant tax breaks for the rich. Now, Senate Republicans would also cut spending by more than $5 trillion over a decade, though they don't have any specifics. We all know where they're going to go. You think they're going to cut money from the military? Oh, no, you're kidding me. Of course they won't. No, what this is going to come from, it's going to come from programs that help the poor. It's going to come from education, housing assistance, food stamps. They're just going to cut everything and then give it all to the rich. And that's what they do. That's what the Republican Party stands for. Their greed, the greed of the donors, is endless. And of course, to go back to the point about Rand Paul here for a second. Now, Rand Paul he's actually sort of principled when it comes to the deficit, right? Sort of. So that's why he didn't vote for this. But anybody else, any of the Republicans who howled about deficits during the reign of President Obama, for example, well, again, this bill plans to add $400 billion to annual deficits. That ends up going to the national debt. Wait, I thought deficits mattered. I thought you cared so much about reducing the deficit. No, this adds to the deficit. And you know what? It's because they think, hey, man, now we're in charge. Deficits don't matter. No, they don't matter at all. And look, I'm okay with getting deficits because as long as we cut taxes for the rich, we cut taxes for our donors, the people who give us our checks. Now, the reaction from this, from Democrats, obviously fairly swift. Bernie Sanders said the Republican budget is not a bad bill. It is, quote, a horrific bill. I would agree with that. Jeff Merkley called the vote a, quote, dark deed and said people need to stand up and fight back against what the budget represents. And as I said, it represents we're going to give everything to the rich and we're going to screw the poor. And finally, Senator Elizabeth Warren called the bill, quote, garbage. Well, that about sums it up. And again, this is really more of a way for them to go and open the way for tax cuts through budget reconciliation. It's a completely partisan effort to try and do taxes because they know that the Democrats, they're going to get a lot of pressure from progressives, especially progressives that are going to be voting in 2018 and candidates, that are going to be primary and corporate Democrats. They know that, oh man, if we try to support tax cuts for the rich and for our donors and our consultants, well, we're going to lose. We're going to get crushed by these progressives that are running against us. We can't do that. So and the Republicans are like, yeah, we know. So we're just going to write a tax bill without you that is a giant gift to our donors. Now for the voters, now look, the people who got suckered into voting for Republicans because they represented change, right? Well, this is your change. Here's your change. This is exactly what Republicans do. This is exactly what we've warned you about the whole time. Don't put Republicans in power. Because this is the kind of legislation that you're going to get. Okay. All right. Now, Paul Ryan is the Speaker of the House. And look, he's got a pretty tough job. I mean, Speaker Boehner, he left because he's like, I don't want to do this freaking job anymore. Look how much I drink. So now I say that not because I like Paul Ryan or the job he's doing. I think he's doing a terrible job, and I think he's a terrible person. But I do mention this because of the reality he seems to find himself in. He's the Speaker of the House, and he's out there. He's got to defend Trump. He's the one that's got to deal with President Trump, and he's also got to go and rally the House to try and pass their agenda. And so far, he's having a bitch of a time. Now, and it's about to get even more difficult for him. According to Politico, Paul Ryan's allies are starting to pull the chute. Quote, a number of the Speaker's closest comrades in the House have called it quits in recent weeks because they're tired of President Trump's antics, depressed over the GOP's dearth of legislative accomplishments this year, or have what they say are personal reasons. Right. Now, whatever the cause is, they write, the departures are certain to make Paul Ryan's job as House Speaker harder, depriving him of loyal lieutenants in a conference already riven by ideological and stylistic divisions. Now, so they go into one of the people who are leaving. This is Representative Pat Tiberi. Now, he is a loyal ally of Paul Ryan, and he happens to be the latest person that is leaving. The Ohio Republican announced on Thursday that he will resign by the end of January to take a job in the private sector. House GOP leaders had hoped the Senior Ways and Means Committee member would lead the powerful tax panel in the coming years. House GOP sources told Politico, but Tiberi, a longtime tax reform proponent, had made other plans just as tax talks are kicking off in earnest. So, look, this guy, it's funny. He's a gigantic tax reform proponent. He's like, yeah, I want to cut taxes for my donors. I can actually help do that being on the Ways and Means Committee. But instead, he's like, no, I can't handle this. I'm out of it. Trump is a pain in the ass. I can't deal with him. I got to go. Very interesting. Now, look, you guys remember the report, right? Where there are Republicans that right now are just waiting for these tax cuts to get done. And the reason that they're waiting is like, okay, we know Donald Trump is a danger to the Republic, but we got to get our tax cuts. I mean, come on. We're not going to pass up this chance for historic tax reform, which it would be historic because we've never seen these levels of tax cuts before, especially for the rich. And it's funny that this guy wants to go before he even gets a chance to do that. But the rest of the Republicans, they're staying, they're waiting. And then whether or not tax reform actually gets done or not, well, that'll, of course, lead to what actions they take afterwards. Now, Tiberi, Politico says, according to multiple House GOP sources, will hardly be the last to leave. Lawmakers have grown increasingly frustrated with Trump's penchant for drama and an inability to focus on a legislative agenda. Numerous House GOP lawmakers and staffers said, while Trump and most Republican voters blame Congress for nothing substantial getting done, GOP lawmakers are privately exasperated that they do not have a coherent leader who can help them deliver on their agenda. That's what drove Republican Dave Trott to announce that he would head back to Michigan once his current term ends. Trott stood up at a late July House Republican conference meeting to complain that the White House was so distracted by the scandal enveloping Anthony Scaramucci at the time that Trump failed to help the Senate pass its Obamacare repeal bill. 6 weeks later, after the health care repeal collapsed in the upper chamber, Trott announced his retirement. So there's a good example of a Republican saying, look, the White House is not showing any sort of leadership. All they're doing is they're fighting scandal after scandal. They're putting out fires, and Trump is just starting new fires. That's what he does. He goes like, okay, well, here's a scandal. I know. Let's give you an even worse scandal. Let me grab the Twitter. Hold my beer. And it's having a huge impact on Republican morale on the Hill. Now, the legislative letdowns, they write, under Trump have weighed heavily on House Republicans, according to Charlie Dent. Now, that's a Republican who recently announced that he will not seek re-election in 2018. He said, quote, it's very difficult to achieve big-ticket items, not to mention just accomplish the basic items of governance, keeping the government open or not defaulting on our obligations. So that's a source of frustration for me. He added, Congress should take a lot of the blame, yes, but so should the president. The president doesn't lay down his plans, his ideas, his policies, and he sure as hell didn't try to sell it to the American people on health care. And that's a function of leadership. Saying, send me a bill and I'll sign it, that's not leadership. Okay, look, there's a reason that President Trump did not sell or try to sell the health care plan to the American people. It's because it was already super unpopular. You can't really sell America a pile of shit and expect them to buy it. Look, it was at 17% approval. It had nothing in there that the American people actually liked. It had everything in there that they did not like. High risk pools, no guaranteed coverage for pre-existing conditions, and it would actually would have raised premiums for older and sicker people. That's not what people wanted out of healthcare, and that's not what Trump had promised. So, no, it's not the fact that he failed to sell that turd. It's the fact that it was a turd. But anyway, not only that, but look, as far as plans and ideas and policies go, he doesn't have any. He doesn't have any. And look, Donald Trump is a reality show president. He's there for the drama and to personally enrich himself, and he's also there. There's some chance that he thinks he's on The Apprentice still. Oh, what are the ratings? What are the cable news hosts saying about me on? What are they saying to me about or about me on Morning Joe, about on CNN? Or what are they saying on Fox and Friends? Where's my ratings? Where's my ratings? Oh, my ratings are down. I have to come up with another scandal. Here, hold my beer. He has no idea what he's doing. He is not fit to be president. And of course, that whole thing has Republicans actually really upset. One recently departed House staffer had this to say about the challenges of legislating in the era of Trump. Quote, the job isn't fun anymore. You get beat up in D.C. for everything Trump says or does, only to go home to get beat up for not defending Trump enough by the base. It's brutal. Look, man, I wish I could feel bad for you, but the reality is you created that problem. Your party. The Republican Party has lied to its base for decades. They fear-mongered against Muslims and minorities. They push corporate cronyism. I'm not saying that the Democrats haven't also pushed corporate cronyism, but you get my point. Their policies have helped shrink the middle class while giving enormous gains to the wealthy and powerful. And that's all while ignoring the white supremacy that was brewing in your own party. Are you really surprised that all those factors didn't come back to bite you in the ass? I'm just saying. Now back to the article. The flurry of retirements could create additional headaches for Paul Ryan, who now has to scramble for votes to get must-pass legislation over the finish line as it is. Now that's actually good for progressives in a way. But there are some pieces of legislation that actually do need to get through, like stuff to continue the government, for example. We don't want another government shutdown. Now, conservatives, they write, often balk at bills to fund the government or raise the debt ceiling, forcing the speaker to turn to more moderate or pragmatic members for their support, and those are the people who are leaving. So all we're going to be left with is the Freedom Caucus. You think the Freedom Caucus is going to fund the government? Nope. They say if those lawmakers keep dropping, Paul Ryan might have to twist a few more arms. Now, one senior House Republican speaking anonymity, speaking on the who requested anonymity, I should say, said it puts pressure on all of us to stick together when our closest allies are running for the exits. And they absolutely are running. And now some of them won't openly admit that it's about Trump. No, others will be like, no, I want to spend time with family. Talk about Jason Chaffetz, who, recently left Congress as well. He's like, no, I just want to spend more time with my family and everything like that. It doesn't have anything to do about Donald Trump. He was going to be involved in the investigations when it comes to Trump. He didn't want to get involved. He didn't want to defend Trump. He got the hell out of there. He pulled the chute. The whole spending time with family thing, that's a bullshit excuse. People in power generally don't give up that power without a really good reason. And I think it's the reason is that Trump is going down. And I think there's a lot of people in Congress that are afraid of going down with him. No, I wasn't a friend. I wasn't allied with that guy. I didn't help him out at all. I quit due to my conscience. They'll come out later after Trump goes down and be like, no, I stood against him by leaving. I'm out the door. Now, for Paul Ryan, well, the guy, he's still there, so obviously he's got a job to do, right? The donors, that's who they serve. They must have their return on investment. So what he's doing is that he's doing everything that he can to try and get some of those people to stay so they can pass different pieces of legislation. Ryan has personally sought to halt the exodus. Last week, House Budget Chairwoman Diane Black was considering resigning to run full-time for Tennessee governor. But Ryan implored her to stay a little longer and help him hash out a budget agreement with the Senate, according to multiple people familiar with their conversation. Now, Diane Black, it's funny, I just did a story on her recently. She was one of the ones who wanted hospitals to be able to deny care to people if they don't have insurance. Like before they went, before Ronald Reagan signed into law a bill that forces hospitals that get federal money through Medicare to serve anyone who comes to their doors. She's like, no, get rid of that. I want hospitals to be able to go back to patient dumping. So that's kind of people that Paul Ryan reaches out to. They say part of the Republican base is deplorable. I'd say there's a lot more than part. But anyway, Paul Ryan, unfortunately for him, has not had the same luck with others. So far, 2 Republicans have announced that they are resigning and 7 that they have announced that they are retiring. 10 GOP lawmakers have also said that they're leaving House to run for higher office. One senior Republican did argue that the turnover was roughly the same at this point in previous Congresses. However, House GOP sources note that the type of members leaving, i.e. more seasoned lawmakers who roll with the team, as Ryan likes to say, is what makes the departures more notable. So this is your Republican establishment that is going, I can't deal with this, I gotta go. And of course, I think that's got a lot to do with Trump being such a divisive president. Not all of it, but I think he's the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, one GOP staffer who recently departed says House members have grown discouraged because the Senate often fails to take up legislation they send over, but more often, they said, the gripe is over Trump disrupting any legislative momentum with controversial comments that overtake the news. Republicans then have to respond to the president's remarks, and while many of them personally abhor Trump's bombast, they feel they can't criticize him because their constituents still adore the president. And you know why? They love Trump because he's just like them. Look, at this point, anybody who still defends Trump agrees with him in his worldview. They think that all the news is fake, or at least any news that criticizes Trump, that women are okay with having their pussies grabbed, and that Trump's doing an amazing job despite no actual legislative achievements under his watch. They think his tweets are awesome, and that white supremacists are very fine people. That's who a lot of Trump's base is. Okay. And unfortunately, they're a significant part of the Republican Party. And these Republican congressmen who are now fleeing to the exits helped build that. You built that. Now these same Republicans live in constant fear that Trump will sell them out in a spur-of-the-moment deal with the Democrats, as he did on the debt ceiling last month, or an off-the-cuff comment. Because he's went after, look at the people he's went after. Jeff Sessions, Rex Tillerson, what was it? There's so many different people that he went after. Again, Bob Corker, who was once considered to be somebody that he wanted to put into his cabinet. Now he's openly feuding with Bob Corker. So it's amazing. He's went after, of course, Paul Ryan, like I said before, Mitch McConnell, getting into feuds with everybody. Okay? So, yeah. He would even undercut his own press secretary back when Sean Spicer was there. So, look, that's a very significant worry. What if I get undercut by the president? I get made to be look like a fool. I say one thing and Trump tweets 6 hours later, or like at 4 a.m, something completely the opposite, and now I got to go and fix it. Now, more traditional Republicans also worry that Trump will upend their carefully laid plans. The president keeps insisting, for instance, that he wants a bipartisan tax bill, when GOP leaders have been clearly writing a partisan one. He also ended Obamacare subsidy payments to insurance companies, injecting uncertainty into healthcare markets. And, of course, the effect on the Republicans there is that if the healthcare markets collapse, who are they going to blame? They're going to blame the GOP. That's going to kill their reelection chances. Not only that, but he cut off work permits for undocumented immigrants who came to the U.S. as minors, despite a majority of Americans agreeing that, hey, we should have DACA protections. Now, Republicans also hope that tax reform will succeed and blunt the GOP departures, but if it falls through, though, they'll be ready for more Republicans to follow Tiberi out the door. Now, personally, I think one of two things will happen. Okay? First, tax reform fails. And the Republicans, they pull the shoe. That'll be the last straw. Or, if they do get tax reform, these same Republicans will then turn on Donald Trump and openly ignite war within the GOP in order to get rid of him. Remember, tax reform, these tax cuts for the rich, this is what they're hedging their bets on, right? They don't have a better chance of doing this. This is the best chance that they have. And so they're going to try so very hard to try and get these tax cuts passed. And if they do, again, if we believe Robert Reich's friend, whom he spoke to, who was a former Republican congressman who said, hey, man, look, all the inside chatter is we think Trump's a danger to the Republic. We've got to get rid of him. But we're not going to get rid of him until we get our tax cuts. If he's to be believed, then that's exactly what they're going to do. Because they're never going to get another chance to do these enormous tax cuts for their donors. So, look, if Trump and the GOP fail at this, it's going to get ugly. And if they actually don't fail at this, it's still going to get ugly. So, no matter what direction this takes, this is going to be very, very bad for President Trump and the Republican Party. Okay. So let's move on. Is President Trump the worst president in history? Well, a majority of Americans seem to think so. According to a new Marist poll, 42% of Americans believe that President Trump will now be remembered as one of the worst presidents in U.S. history. Now, I'm going to go into why I do think that's kind of unfair later on, but let's give you the numbers here. I know, drama, right? Another 16% think Trump will be remembered as a below-average leader. Now, so that's, again, it's a big majority where they think, yes, he's going to be remembered as one of the worst presidents in history, or he's at least below average. Well, I would say he's well below average. But anyway, what about people who actually like him? 18% of respondents expect Trump will be remembered as an above average president or one of the best presidents in history. Now remember, I gave you two different numbers. 42% say that worst president in history, no doubt. Another 16% add that onto it, below average. But on the side of pro-Trump, only 18%. So he'll say he'll be both above average or one of the best in history. That's sad. Now, I do kind of want to ask those people, hey man, what has he done to make him the best president? Although I do assume the answer is going to be, well, he's not Obama. He's not Obama. Fair enough. Now, let's break it down by party, okay? Let's start with the Republicans. Now, 48% of Republicans think Trump will be remembered as one of the best or as an above-average president. So when you break it down by party, obviously, you're going to have nearly half of all Republicans going, the best. He's the best. He's tremendous. Now, about one-third of Republicans, however, think Trump will be remembered as an average president. Now, let's go over to the Democrats. No surprise, 70% of Democratic respondents think Trump will be remembered as one of the worst presidents in history, while another 18% of Democrats think Trump will be remembered as below average. So that is no surprise, again, but the Republican numbers are very interesting. Less than half of all Republicans think he's doing a great job or even the best job. Now, I think that's likely because he hasn't been able to do anything. Essentially, at this point, he's been a lame duck. All he does is stir up controversy on Twitter. He has not shown results. He hasn't repealed Obamacare. He hasn't, so far, done tax reform. Though I think most Americans, in fact, there are polls where most Americans are against giving more taxes for the rich. So they're actually against that tax plan. And again, he hasn't done anything when it comes to the opioid epidemic. He hasn't built a wall. There's no wall yet. So, yeah. So those numbers are interesting, and they also make a lot of sense. Now, here's where this poll actually does kind of matter. Now, 60% of independents expect Trump will be remembered as a below-average leader or one of the worst in history. Now, when you lose independents, you're likely to lose elections. In fact, just ask the Democrats about that. They did not do well. Hillary Clinton, I should say, did not do well with independents. Now, this poll, look, this does illustrate how bad Trump is doing when it comes to unpopularity. It's sort of unprecedented. So now let me get into why this isn't exactly fair. Now, when you look at a presidency, for example, you've got to take in a lot of factors. Well, number one, Trump's not even finished yet. He's only 10 months in. I know, for me, it's felt like 10 years. But look, it's not really enough time to say that he's the worst president in history. Now, let's look at Bush, for example. George W., right? Terrible president, war criminal, idiot, although Trump does make him look like a genius, and somebody who helped crash the economy while giving giant tax cuts for the rich, while simultaneously fighting two unfunded wars. By all measures, the Bush presidency was an absolute policy and economic disaster. It was so bad that he got into the 20s in his last year in office. They had to hide this guy during the Obama presidency because, again, while McCain was running for the presidency in 2008, they had to hide George W. Bush because he was such an embarrassment to the party. So like, no, don't bring him out. No, we are moving past George W. Bush. We're not going to do that again. That guy was an idiot. I mean, there's no way we can do worse than Bush, right? Right? Oh. And then they bring down Trump. But anyway, look, when you look at Trump, by the way, George W. Bush actually does seem like a breath of fresh air. Oh, look, it's that lovable goofball, George W. Bush. Oh, we miss him, don't we? Well, look, the guy is not lovable. He is a war criminal. But thanks to how disastrous Donald Trump is, the media and the Republicans are actually looking to Bush. And they're like, okay, we can rehabilitate you. We can bring you back. That's why the media and the pundits are all like fawning over the recent Bush speech. Because without even mentioning Trump, he just said, white supremacy is bad, okay? And they're like, oh my God, that was the moment when George W. Bush became president. Again, this shows how far the how low the bar has gotten. It's a disaster. Trump has liberals pining for the days of Bush. It's absolutely insane. But the point is, how this relates to the poll is, look, George W. Bush had 8 years to deserve his reputation. Donald Trump, to be fair, has only had 10 months. And still, already, a majority of Americans think he's an absolute disaster. It's amazing. Now, just think if he actually gets something accomplished. That could change. His poll numbers could go up. This poll could change. Or it could continue to spiral down into the toilet. We don't know what way it's going to go or what he's going to do. So I still think it's a little early to call him the worst president in history, but it's not too early to say that he's been a monumental disaster so far. Okay. Let's move on here. All right. A Cub Scout has been kicked out of his den for daring to ask questions of a Colorado state senator at a meeting organized by the Boy Scouts. Now, this is 11-year-old Ames Mayfield. Now, he's a fifth grader at Prospect Ridge Academy, and he's been a scout for about 5 years. Now, on October 9th, he asked the senator who stopped by to take questions, Vicky Marble, questions about gun control and also about comments Marble made at a 2013 legislative hearing on poverty. Now, the boy's mother, Lori Mayfield, on Wednesday said Ames, after asking that question, was kicked out of his den or scout group as a result. Now, look, first, what I want to do before I get to his question is because it relates to these comments made in 2013. So I'm going to show you a video with some audio from those comments from 2013 that at the time were widely covered. Earlier today, in fact, while looking up the story, I saw that Kyle Kulinski from Secular Talk had also mentioned these comments, so he covered it. So I want to show you that video right now. Let's take a look.
Also, when you look at life expectancy, there are problems in the black race. Sickle cell anemia is something that comes up. Diabetes is something that's prevalent in the genetic makeup, and you just can't help it. Although I gotta say, I've never had better barbecue and better chicken and ate better in my life than when you go down south and I love it, and everybody loves it.
Wow. So, look, that is deeply racist. She started out by saying, well, there's problems with the black race. And also said, and then somehow she went to eating chicken. And it kind of gives you the impression that she's blaming black people for being poor and fat and unhealthy. You know what I mean? They're genetically inferior, but then they also go down south and they eat fried chicken and barbecue chicken. And it's amazing. I love their barbecue and fried chicken and everything, but that's a problem. You know who loves barbecue and fried chicken? I do. I love it. But look, what this is that this is stereotyping, and also a way to blame black people for being poor. Again, this was a poverty summit, right? She was talking about poverty. Now, let's fast forward to 2017. Now, Ames had asked this of Marble. And now remember, this is a 10, 11-year-old kid, right? He said, I was astonished that you blame black people for poor health and poverty because of all the chicken and barbecue they eat. Now, here's her response. No, I didn't say that. What are you talking about? I didn't say that. What are you talking about? Fake news. Quote, I didn't. That was made up by the media. So you want to believe it? You believe it. But that's not how it went down. I didn't do that. That was false. Get both sides of the story. But wait a minute. You guys just heard the audio. The audio tape has existed for years. It's there. You can check. You just heard it. She said there were problems in the black race. They have inferior genetics, and they just can't help it. And by the way, you go down south, and you've got all that barbecue chicken. That is disgustingly racist. Now, Marble told the rest of the scouts, in order to defend herself, I guess, quote, "Oh, we have multicultural foods in the United States, and we're very blessed to have it. And we all love it, and we all eat it. We just better figure out our genetics. It's a genetic problem with the black race." Now, Marble went on to tell the scouts as well that she is herself from a multi-ethnic background, and that includes, quote, black, Mexican, Jew, Native American, and the lousy Irish. Yeah, we don't care what your ethnic background is. If you say something incredibly racist during a meeting on poverty to attempt to blame black people for their own problems, based on their genetics and how much chicken they eat, that means you're being racist. Now, Marble also weighed in on this kid getting kicked out. She said decisions about who is in or out of a den are internal organizational matters that I won't second guess. I don't blame the boy for asking the questions, since I believe there was an element of manipulation involved, and it wasn't much different from the questions I normally field in other meetings. The invitation to meet with the scouts was never intended to cause friction and controversy. Now, did you get that? Oh, so the boy was manipulated. He couldn't have possibly come up with that question. It must have been his mother. Oh, his mother manipulating him to ask political questions. Now, look, the kid's probably 10 or 11 years old, right? We're not talking about a little kid. We're not talking about a toddler, okay? Now, kids at that age are observant. They're observant and they're smart and they're able to do their own research. And that's exactly what Ames had done. He looked into Marble and he was like, holy crap, she said something incredibly racist. And now the reason that he looked into her is because he wanted to be armed with good questions. And it's not like the other kids didn't have good questions. Again, they asked about gun control. They asked about, voting for President Obama. They asked about politics. So this is a group of kids that were doing good research to make sure that they asked their congresswomen good questions, right? And I'm definitely encouraging that. Now, his mother said, quote, the only coaching I gave him was to be respectful. Don't be argumentative. Preface things with all due respect. I felt my son followed those directions. He asked hard questions, but he was not disrespectful. Well, you asked Marble, I should say, she would probably think, oh yeah, disrespectful. But see, that's what's bothered me, right? People think it's disrespectful to challenge people on things that they've already said. Like, how dare you ask me about that? No, that's not what happened. It's fake news. Disrespectful. No, if anything, that's the kind of thing you want to do. You want to raise your kids to ask tough questions of people in power. You want somebody who will hold people accountable when they grow up and start involving themselves in the political process. So I think that, what this kid did was, hey, you keep asking those questions, you keep holding people accountable, and you ignore what these Congress people say if they're going after you. So props to that kid and the mother for standing up. And it sucks that he had to lose his membership in that group, but he can always join other groups, and that's exactly what's going to happen. So he's not leaving the Scouts, and in fact, one of the speakers for the Boy Scouts said that he would actually make a fine Boy Scout when he grows up. So, all right. Let's move on. Now, there's a new landmark analysis that found that pollution actually kills more people than war, disaster, or hunger. Now, this is across the world. Now, this is according also to the most comprehensive global analysis done to date of pollution. Now, according to this analysis, pollution kills at least 9 million people and costs trillions of dollars every year. Now, the report goes on to explain that toxic air, water, soils, and workplaces are also responsible for the diseases that kill 1 in 6 people around the world, and that the true total cost could be millions higher because of the impact of many pollutants are poorly understood. Now, the deaths attributed to pollution are triple that from those from AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis combined. So you look at all these major diseases, and you compare that to the deaths from pollution and pollution-related illnesses, that's huge, 3 times. Now, in America, of course, pollution does happen to be a problem, especially now that we've been in an era of deregulation. But as it stands, the vast majority of pollution deaths occur in poorer nations, and in some, such as India, Chad, and Madagascar, pollution causes a quarter of all deaths. Now, in wealthy countries like the U.S. and Japan and Germany, they're also in the top 10 for deaths from modern forms of pollution, which is basically described as fossil fuel-related air pollution and chemical pollution. Now, this study was from the authors of the Commission on Pollution and Health, and it was published in The Lancet on Friday. And they said it is one of the great existential challenges of the human-dominated Anthropocene era. Pollution endangers the stability of the Earth's support systems and threatens the continuing survival of human societies. Now, like I said before, that 9 million number is actually conservative. Now, the report explains that this is because scientists are still discovering the links between pollution and ill health, such as the connection between air pollution and dementia, diabetes, and kidney disease. Furthermore, lack of data on many toxic metals and chemicals are also not included with this new analysis. So even though it's super comprehensive, there's a lot of things that we don't know about how pollution impacts us personally. Now, we do know the impact of pollution on countries. Now, you'll be shocked to find out that pollution negatively impacts the world economy. Yeah, it's a little bit of sarcasm. No, researchers estimate the welfare losses from pollution are at $4.6 trillion a year. Now, that's the equivalent of more than 6% of global GDP and is an astounding amount of money. And it's not just, like I said, the impact pollution has on people, but it also, I'm sorry, that is the impact pollution has on people and welfare programs, of course, but that doesn't mention the land, water, and air. Now, speaking of air pollution, the Commission report combined data from the World Health Organization and elsewhere and found that air pollution happened to be the biggest killer, leading to heart disease, stroke, and lung cancer, as well as other illnesses. Outdoor air pollution, largely from vehicles and industries, caused 4.5 million deaths a year, and indoor air pollution from wood and dung stoves caused 2.9 million deaths. So, again, the wood stoves are primarily used in undeveloped countries, but we dwarf them by 4.5 million. Now, the next biggest killer was pollution of water, often with sewage, which is linked to 1.8 million deaths as a result of gastrointestinal diseases and parasitic infections. Workplace pollution, including exposure to toxins, carcinogens, and secondhand tobacco smoke, resulted in 800,000 deaths from diseases including pneumoconiosis in coal workers and bladder cancer in dye workers. Lead pollution, which is what's going on in Flint and a lot of other American cities, was linked to about 500,000 deaths per year. Now, it won't surprise you that places that have little regulation on industry are affected the worst. Now, these are generally low-income and rapidly industrializing countries, and they make up 92% of all pollution-related deaths, with Somalia suffering the highest rate of pollution death. India, where both traditional and modern pollution happen to be severe, has by far the largest number of pollution deaths at 2.5 million, China in second with 1.8, and Russia and the U.S. are in the top 10. Now, I understand China and India, but well, how are we in the top 10? Oh, right. It's because we have deregulation. We've got Republicans and corporate Democrats that work together to deregulate industry because, look, they don't care about the environment. They got to get paid. And look, Donald Trump, since he got into office, has rolled back several of President Obama's regulations on coal ash. Now you're allowed to, as a company, to dump coal ash into the rivers. Wonderful. But look, President Obama wasn't even super great on the environment. During his administration, we had a fracking boom. Now, fracking has been known to contaminate groundwater with chemicals, as well as release a lot of methane, which ends up going to climate change. However, compared to Republicans, I mean, look, Republicans, they've wanted to destroy the EPA for quite a long time. And now they have Scott Pruitt as head of the EPA. Now, before he was head of the EPA, he sued them multiple times to try and prevent them from doing any sort of regulation. Now that he's head of the EPA, he's basically turned it into an administration, an agency that protects industry and not the environment. So, I mean, I can talk about the impacts of pollution in America. I can't really speak to impacts of pollution across the globe, which is actually, like I said, like the report said, far, far worse than we have in America. But at the same time, what we can do is we can talk about this in an American context. So what should we do in our American context? Well, the researchers said we should roll out new regulations and subsidies for polluting industries and deploy new technologies. And they give the example of smokestack filters. Now, I think in America, that right now is going to be impossible. Why? Because right now there's a new rule that for every one regulation that is implemented, 2 need to be repealed. That's insanity. That's childish. For subsidies, oh, you think we're going to end the subsidies? Are you kidding? Not with our bought Congress. Heck no. The reason that we're not going to do any of these things right now is because industry runs the place. And we've given the keys to the castle to an idiot who doesn't care about anything but his own, fortune, his own bottom line. And the Republicans, like I said in Congress, they don't even believe climate change is happening. They don't believe that pollution is a bad thing. They're like, yeah, it's a cost of doing business. Yet let's allow these corporations to continue to pollute more because that helps our donors. So yes, we're going to deregulate. A little pollution isn't that harmful for you, right? No. These are both problems that we can actually do something about if we had the political will as a nation to actually lead the world in doing so. Now, imagine if the United States, and we could definitely do this, became a world leader in solar power and in cleaning up pollution. We could lead the rest of the world. What do we choose to do? We choose to go backwards, and we choose to deregulate and give all the breaks to these companies who pollute. We're making the problem worse. We're not making it better. And we're not going to make it better as long as the people that are in charge are enriched by being able to have these companies pollute the world. And they're enriched through campaign donations. Oil and gas industry and all these chemical industries give so much to both Republicans and Democrats, more so to Republicans, but they're allowed to, through those donations, to basically control what Congress actually does and what kind of regulations they decide to pass. So that's what's going on here. That's our problem. And unfortunately, until we solve that problem of lobbyist money in politics, we're going to continue to have nothing get done. And more people are going to die from pollution that is entirely preventable. Okay, one more. Speaking of pollution, let's go to Alex Jones. Now, if there's one thing Alex Jones wants you to know is that he's a man. He is a manly man, and he's a patriot. And that you can be a manly man too if you take his dietary supplements that he swears are completely 100% safe and are so incredibly beneficial to you. Well, there's one national watchdog group that doesn't actually agree with this, that says that no, these supplements are actually incredibly unsafe. In fact, according to the Center of Environmental Health, they found high lead levels in these supplements. Oops. According to an article in Gizmodo, independent testing commissioned by the National Health Watchdog, the Center for Environmental Health, found high levels of lead in 2 of Alex Jones' InfoWars products. Tests found that these 2 supplements sold on Alex Jones' InfoWars store contained significant levels of lead, well in excess of California Proposition 65's limits. Now, let me give you a refresher on what lead exposure actually does to people. Well, we know from what's going on in Flint that it has devastating developmental impacts on children. Now, those impacts include low IQ, learning disabilities, and aggression. But there are other impacts as well. According to the EPA, that happen to include high blood pressure, heart disease, cancer, delayed puberty in both men and women, and, this is probably the best part, sperm damage and reduced sperm production in men. Dude, there goes your little guys. They're gone. How bad is it? Well, one of the Alex Jones products tested had more than 6 times the daily limit of lead under Proposition 65. And by the way, a daily limit of lead, right? I think everybody's pretty much agreed that no exposure to lead is safe. And this is 6 times what limit they did put on it. That's amazing. Now, the chemical was also found in the InfoWars Caveman Paleo formula and the InfoWars Myco ZX supplements. People who take the daily recommended dose of the formula product would ingest more than twice the daily limit for lead under California law. People who take the Myco ZX product would ingest more than 6 times the daily limit for lead under California law. Now, Caveman True Paleo, according to Jones, can relieve muscle soreness, improve bone strength, and doesn't have any additives. So what, this is like naturally occurring lead? What are you putting in there? Paint? Like paint from the 1970s? You've got to be kidding me. But this is peak irony, by the way. Now, we all know Alex Jones, he hates the government, right? Hates the government, hates regulations, loves Donald Trump. Now, he has a product that can kill you, or at the very least, destroy all your sperm. This is the opposite of a health supplement. This is an anti-health supplement. So, what if he's selling this on purpose with the lead? I mean, why would he sell something like this? I think I figured it out. Alex Jones is a false flag. What if Alex Jones is in league with the lizard people or the aliens or the demons or whatever they are to destroy men's sperm counts with lead? Look,
we're under attack.
Lizard people, they're coming for your sperm. Again, he's always talking about how we're under attack by the demons and the lizard people and Satan's trying to steal space travel and all that stuff. What if he is on their side and he's a false flag? Interesting. I don't know. He's going to deny it, of course, but that's what they always do when they're in a conspiracy. Or maybe Alex Jones is a charlatan selling a cheap-ass drink in order to make money. Just saying. A little bit more believable than aliens. All right. Anyway, that's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching the show. Make sure to give us a like and a share if you haven't already. Patrons, you can check out the show later on. I'll have it posted up for you guys to watch whenever you want, in case you miss any part of the show. For everybody else, the clips will be up tonight as well, starting at 5 o'clock. That's Eastern time, so we put them up throughout the day on the channel. So check back for new videos 5 days a week. All right. Thank you to the patrons as well for helping keep independent media on the air. Thank you so much. You're all awesome. To everybody else, thank you. Love you guys. Have an awesome weekend. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. Oh, and also, do not drink the Alex Jones drinks. I'm just saying.
That's the fight. That's the key. That's everything.